So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the next in the series of health and safety at work webinars. And today we're focusing on safeguarding in the workplace. Thanks for everybody for joining again. We've got some good numbers on this one, so it's great to see that people are still getting the positive vibes from the webinars, which is brilliant. So I'm Dom Greenwood. My day-to-day role is a health and safety and environmental management consultant. I'm also a national trainer in health and safety, fire, food, and actually as it goes, safeguarding. So I don't teach as many safeguarding courses as health and safety and fire, but I do teach safeguarding in company settings. Behind the scenes, as always, and doing all the whizzy stuff is Rebecca Johnson, our marketing manager, and thanks to her for putting everything together for us for today. Everybody is in listen-only mode. As you'll appreciate, there's so many people on the webinar, and further will join us as we go through that everybody's in listen-only mode. If you could keep that in that stance as well. If you'd like to ask questions, however, what I would suggest is email us the questions. As we have found over the last couple of webinars that we get to a point where we have so many questions come through that we just can't really answer them all within the allotted time. So what we do endeavour to do is put a FAQ document together and then send them out with the recording. So if you'd like to email us any questions, we can then obviously get back to you individually. But if you'd like to ask questions anyway, if we do get time, this is the way to do it. And obviously there is the question bar. You can type your question in, obviously, and submit your question. And if we do get a chance, we'll do our best to answer those. That's all very nice, isn't it? You can blame Rebecca for that. So what we're going to talk about today, so we're going to go right back to the basics and talk about what safeguarding is. And I'm sure many of you know what it is, but for the people that don't understand or don't know some of the finer points of safeguarding, we're going to talk about that. And we're going to look at some of the stats around that I've managed to find through various different regulators and government bodies about, just why it's so important in the workplace. There's a number of pieces of legislation around, and it's not quite as easy as fire and health and safety, because what we do find is safeguarding appears in a number of different legislations, which you need to be aware of. We're going to look at the indicators of abuse and neglect, and then we're going to broach something called the 5 R's, which is a model that you can use in any workplace. Really, it's a very simple model, and it'd be one that we'd like you to look at and potentially roll out in your workplace so that staff can understand how to spot the signs of safeguarding. What other tools are available in the workplace, and then some signposting. And safeguarding is really big on signposting in the respect that there's a number of different ways you can report and refer safeguarding issues, and then further training that we can help you with after this presentation. So how can we help you? It's interesting actually, because what you're going to see really is maybe the first 20 minutes and the last kind of 20 minutes of the level 2, or actually it's the level 3 safeguarding course, the one that I teach and tutor. So if you do like what you're seeing and you do think it's a benefit to other staff, please do contact us, because this is largely taken from the accredited course. There are going to be polls run throughout the session as well, which I'll hand back to Rebecca for, and you'll see a question appear on your screen. If you can answer, I think it's yes, no, or NA, and then we'll talk about the results. But just going back to basics, what is safeguarding? Well, we all know it's a term used to denote measures to protect health, well-being, and human rights of individuals. It's all about people. I think it does get lumped into all about children, and you'll appreciate that absolutely safeguarding children is of paramount importance. But there's other people and other groups of people that we need to think about safeguarding as well. And one of those is young people and also vulnerable adults. When we're talking about vulnerable adults, it could be their living arrangements and what safeguarding measures are there, because they could be living in different accommodation due to their needs. And due to that, they need to be in an area that's free from abuse, harm, and neglect. Nice statement there. Safeguarding is everyone's responsibility. It's about people and organisations working together to prevent and reduce both the risks and experience of abuse and neglect. And there's a whole host of other components that could make up safeguarding, but abuse and neglect are the ones we're thinking about at the moment. If we go back to the workplace, and it could be that the workplace is a care setting or is an area that would look after certain people, but equally it could be an office, it could be a building site, it could be a leisure facility. And if I think about the clients that I represent, I've got 40 different clients across 13 different sectors. Safeguarding would play a part in every one of those sectors, whether it's leisure, retail, care settings, construction, manufacturing, and the like. So in the workplace, there's a legal duty to identify those at risk and taking the appropriate actions. All employees have an entitlement to be safeguarded. So yeah, please try and move away from, well, we don't look after children, so we don't have to worry about safeguarding, and or we haven't got any vulnerable adults. But would you know if you had vulnerable adults? It's all about understanding the workforce. So that's just the last statement there. Is it's important to remember safeguarding isn't just for care and educational establishments, because I have had that thrown at me before when I'm talking to new clients about health and safety, fire safety. Oh, and what do you do about safeguarding? Oh, well, we don't need to, because we don't employ anybody who's vulnerable, and we don't look after children. It's still absolutely worth thinking about what measures you've got in place for safeguarding workers and visitors to your establishments. Just some examples there. What is safeguarding? Well, it could be about protecting children from maltreatment. It could be preventing impairment of children's health or development. So one part of safeguarding could be about not allowing a child to grow, or a really good word is flourish or thrive. And if you think about maybe the children you have, or children you're aware of, are they allowed to flourish or thrive? Are they given opportunities? Are we giving the children the opportunities to grow in circumstances consistent with provision of safe and effective care? And the last point there'd be taking action to enable all children to have the best outcomes and obviously grow and develop. And obviously schools are very much aware of this. However, this could be a sports club, it could be an after-school club, it could be something else that children are going to. I'm not sure where there's a gap there, but protecting their rights to live in safety, free from abuse. This would be more about vulnerable adults. It could also be about elderly people. It could be about people in the community. It could be friends, neighbours, or relatives. It could be friends, neighbours, or relatives that are in care or receive care services. I don't know if anybody watched the Panorama documentary last night, which was actually pretty much all to do with this. It was a secret filmed documentary of a young vulnerable unit where safeguarding they just had no idea about, because they were locking people in rooms, taking their privileges away, and it was really treating them like it was a prison. And guess what? They weren't developing, they weren't getting any better, they weren't giving them the correct medication, and the whole thing came back to safeguarding. So if anybody hasn't seen that, it'd be absolutely worth watching the Panorama documentary from last night, because it's all about what we're talking about now. Again, it talks about people and organisations working together, and something that happened after a number of safeguarding fails over the last 3 or 4 years. I'm not sure if anybody's heard of Victoria Climbié, and you'll all be aware of Baby P, and there's a number of other children that unfortunately aren't with us anymore due to safeguarding issues. Is something that the authorities realised was the authorities weren't talking to each other. So the police may be aware of something, but then social services weren't. Social services may be aware of something, but then maybe a different department wouldn't have been. So things called MASH, M-A-S-H hubs were set up, which we're going to talk about later, where different agencies talk to each other. So it's about organisations working together. And then making sure people's wellbeing is promoted, talked about with regards to their views, feelings, beliefs and wishes. And again, that could be for people who've got learning disabilities or learning needs, elderly people who may have lost capacity, people in the workplace. It could also be about foreign workers. And it's absolutely worth thinking about foreign workers and language barriers and how their safeguarding could be affected. That's why we had some gaps. So some stats, and again, it's just good to put this into context. In the last Safeguarding Adults survey, which was last year, nearly 500,000 concerns were raised, which was an increase of 5% in the previous year. Now we may have some anomalies there with obviously COVID, and that has played havoc with some of the health and safety stats and fire safety stats, and possibly this as well. But it'd be absolutely worth looking at that Safeguarding Adults survey from 2020-21. The number of Section 42 inquiries, and Section 42 inquiries is the inquiry where the police and authorities have to act, because it's very, very serious and dangerous to that particular person. It kind of trumps everything that's being done. Increased again by nearly 13% to 161,000, involved around 130,000 different individuals, again taken from that particular survey. So you can see there's some big numbers on there. There was a YouGov poll around that time, which would be worth looking at, which suggested that 29% of people have been victims of workplace bullying. You know, nearly 30% of people surveyed have been victims of workplace bullying, which is nearly 3 in every 10 workers, and would equate to just over 9 million people in the UK. That's a big statistic. So if you can do a little mental calculation of your workplace, maybe if you've got 20 staff, you can have 100 staff, you can have 500 staff or more. If you try and think about 29% of that workforce, then you'll understand some of the numbers that potentially of people that are being bullied and potentially having safeguarding issues in the workplace. And to put that into context, that's more than the populations of Scotland and Wales. I just took that off the graphic, which I thought was quite interesting. 739,000 incidents of violence at work. You know, violence at work would come under safeguarding because someone's being bullied, potentially abused, either psychologically or could be physically as well. And unfortunately, a lot of these go hand in hand. And again, that's from the bullying in the workplace statistics for the UK. And then the crime survey for England and Wales estimated that 1 in 5 adults aged experienced at least one form of child abuse. So this isn't, this apologies, the age is missing there, but I think it's aged over 18. Experienced at least one form of child abuse. So this is things that have gone back to their childhood, and that could be physical, sexual, or witnessing domestic violence, and that's then carried over into their adult life. So what happens to children and young people can then obviously have a massive impact, which is exactly what was happening in this Panorama documentary last night. Young adults who had gone in for mental health issues, potential suicide attempts, and other safeguarding concerns just weren't improving. And it's because the unit wasn't treating them correctly. Absolutely watch that documentary. Again, the crime survey estimated that approximately 8.5 million adults aged between 18 and 74 had experienced abuse before the age of 16, which is equivalent to 20% of the population. Again, that's from the crime survey of England and Wales. And over 50,000 children in England were identified as needing protection from abuse. That's a lot of children. And that's from the last Department of Education survey. So, you know, the last point there really is safeguarding is a real thing, and isn't just about children, because I think that word really does get mixed up. You know, safeguarding, and everybody just defaults to, oh, it's all about children, and it really isn't, because we're talking about vulnerable adults, elderly people, people with language barriers, disabilities, and other issues. Types of workplace safeguarding issues could include and would include exclusion. You know, why are certain groups of people being excluded in the workplace? Why are people not being invited to certain things? You know, linked to that with bullying and harassment, unwelcome sexual advances, verbal insults. I've witnessed that myself when I've worked in various companies, and also when I've been a consultant. And again, various different groups conform in the workplace. Physical abuse often comes from, you know, mental health issues, or someone's a little bit different, looks a bit different, different sexual orientation, different beliefs and values. Emotional abuse could be humiliation, being called names, being humiliated in front of other staff. That's in relation to their job security, and then taking advantage of disabled or vulnerable workers with regards to time or money. So again, it could be not necessarily trafficking, but it could be that certain groups of people are being asked to work longer hours for less pay, asked to do weekends, and other people are being favoured. So there's just a few observations there of how safeguarding issues can transpose themselves in the workplace. And 29% of people that we've already talked about, just to reiterate, that have been victims of workplace bullying and violence, which again is 3 in every 10, and would equate to just over 9 million. In the workplace, cost to the business. So if we look at the column on the left, potential business implications of safeguarding issues, we're going to have increased sickness. More people are going to go off work because they don't want to go into work because there's a safeguarding issue, which again is going to potentially lead to a rise in staff turnover, and then there's going to be bigger employment costs and training costs for you as the employer. These people are not going to be as productive, and their productivity is going to go down. So decreased productivity, staff morale will suffer, credibility of management will fail and fall, poor employee-employer relations, and eventually the company could develop a bad reputation because people talk. And certainly if there's an issue to be investigated potentially, or if it's a criminal matter, it's going to receive high profile kind of media, social media, or could obviously get into the papers. Potential employee implications could be for the employees, increasing stress. We've already talked about mental health, massive at the moment. We're just coming off the back of 2 years of COVID. We've got various national issues with regards to energy. And other foreign workers could be involved in some of the conflicts that are taking place abroad. So mental health at the moment is really high. Mental health issues, sorry, is really high. They're not going to want to come to work, so they're going to have falling or decreased job satisfaction, potential physical health risks, high blood pressure, other stuff, and then eventually job performance would suffer and decrease, and potentially that person could or would leave. So there's massive implications to the business and staff. So look, we've introduced the subject. Let's do our first poll. I'm going to hand back to Rebecca with the first question being, do you feel, think about your workplace, do you feel that safeguarding is taken seriously in your workplace? Simple question. And I'll hand back to Rebecca for that.
Thank you, Dom. So I'm just launching the poll now, so you should see it in your screens. You can just vote a simple yes or no answer on this poll. Do you feel that safeguarding is taken seriously in your workplace? Okay, we've got a lot of responses coming in. I'll just give it a couple more seconds. Yeah, let's leave it there. So really good to see that 79% of you said yes, we do feel it's taken seriously. 21% said no. So I'll hand back to you on that one, Dom. Thanks everyone for taking part.
Brilliant. So music to my ears, really, that nearly 80% of people on the call, and there's quite a lot of you on the call, are saying that safeguarding is taken seriously. Great to hear. I guess the focus, I'd shift to the 21% that don't feel that it is, and thinking about what you can do in the workplace. And throughout the presentation, more towards the end, there are going to be some tools that employers can think about, and obviously we can talk to people as well. But thank you for doing that, doing the poll there. Just think about legislation. Over the years, a number of pieces of legislation and guidance documents have been applied to safeguard and protect children, young people, and adults at risk in the UK. And something that I have found is the government websites are always the best places to look at. All the acts and regulations are there, as and when they get updated, because they do get updated quite a lot. Reviewed, updated, various things are changed. It's always worth going to the .gov.uk website, type in the search bar, whatever you're looking for, whether it be health and safety, fire, safeguarding, and it will send you to the right place. But there are some main pieces of legislation there, and you can see straight away there's the Children Act, which was first come out in the late 80s, and it was updated 2004. For those of you in the care sector, you'll be aware of the Care Act, and there's probably other ones as well. Mental Capacity Act, Safeguarding Vulnerable Groups, and obviously it does feature in the Health and Safety at Work Act. So the last comment there would be safeguarding appears in varied legislations, and I think this is where it is different to things like health and safety and fire, where there is specific sections of maybe the Health and Safety at Work Act or the Fire Safety Reform Order that you can look at as an employer, whereas depending on what sector you're in and depending on what the safeguarding issue might be, you might have to look at various different pieces of legislation. And this is why it's always worth going back to the gov.uk. Interestingly, and this is part of the course that I teach, and this is provided by the awarding body, there's a whole host of other legislations there. Adoption and Children Act, Care Standards, Childcare Act, there's loads there, and there's some that I've not actually heard of and even looked into, but it's absolutely worth looking at as many pieces of legislation as you can to look at what's going to be specific for your organisation. You've got education, equality, and then obviously more domestic violence and other things as well. There's an NHS Community Care Act, which I'll be honest, I wasn't particularly aware of. I've since looked into, and again, that seems relevant. So the safeguarding does appear in so many pieces of legislation as well. Just going back really to what some of the terms in safeguarding is. What is significant harm? The term significant harm can include any form of abuse, neglect, accident or injury that's sufficiently serious to adversely affect the progress and enjoyment of someone's life. And I think this is where we need to be careful. I teach the course, and we get into this bit and someone says, oh, someone's been pushed over and they've cut their leg. Is that a safeguarding issue? Well, it may be the start of a safeguarding issue, but does it significantly and sufficiently add seriousness to affect the progress and enjoyment of someone's life? And you'd probably say in that instance, no, it doesn't. But if it happens every day, and then it starts to be twice a day, and then it starts to be outside the workplace, you would then argue then absolutely it would be significant harm. What is abuse? Because surely abuse and harm are the same thing. Well, not quite. Abuse could be and could and would take the form of a number of different safeguarding issues. It's the violation of an individual's human and civil rights by any other person or persons. So it doesn't have to be by one person. It could be a group of people. It could be in the workplace. And we've all seen the documentaries and things like that online. I'm not sure if anybody's seen the documentary about 4 girls. It's absolutely worth looking at, about in the north part of the country, where 4 girls were obviously sexually abused by a group of men. It's absolutely worth looking at, because it really does split out the difference between harm, abuse, and neglect. And you would argue they were suffering all three. The abuse can vary from treating someone with disrespect in a way which significantly affects the person's joy of life to cause an actual physical suffering, with neglect being more of a persistent failure. And it could be self-neglect, somebody who's not looking after themselves properly, they're not taking their medication, they may have, I don't know, they may have diabetes or epilepsy, and they're not taking their medication, so they're neglecting themselves. They may not be eating properly, they may be on various different drugs, or they may be addicted to certain things, and you'd argue that's neglect. However, it could be that somebody else is neglecting them who's supposed to be looking after them. It could be a child that's not receiving medication, educational needs, warmth, support, whatever it might be. It could be somebody in the workplace that you're made aware of that needs to undertake certain things throughout the day. It could be a religious activity. It could be they need certain tablets at a certain time of day. It could be they need rest periods. It could be that they need medication or medical visits or interventions, and you're not allowing them to do that. So due to that, you're neglecting them as a worker. Although it's very difficult to accept, child and adult abuse does happen, as we know, and is unfortunately all too common occurrences across most cultures and countries. Any child or adult, regardless of their age, gender, race, religion, cultural, or social background, may be and probably could be at risk for physical, sexual, psychological harm and or potential victims of abuse. There is, however, evidence to suggest that instances of abuse can be reduced and often prevented through implementation of national strategies, which we're going to talk about later, and obviously the promotion of human rights. And there's various different forms of abuse, and these are the ones that we generally talk about on the full day's training. And we kind of break these down and spend, say, 20-30 minutes on each section. Physical abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse, discriminatory, domestic, financial, modern slavery, organizational abuse, neglect from others, self-neglect we just talked about, and bullying and victimization. And I mean, as a collective, somebody could be going through one or more than one, sometimes 3 or 4. Sexual abuse always runs hand in hand with physical abuse and psychological abuse. It's just how it is. If someone's being sexually abused, they're being physically abused as well. And obviously they're then thinking about the actions and the acts, and that's then affects them psychologically as well. Quite oftenly, domestic abuse will lead to physical abuse as well, and could be one or more of the others. And due to a lot of the characteristics of these, the person could then self-neglect because of what they're going through as well. Interestingly, modern slavery has appeared over the last, say, 3 or 4 years onto the training, due to the amount of people that are now part of this. I was only with a client yesterday who's a taxi service, who said that he had unfortunately two Eastern European girls brought into him, who it was very obvious they'd been brought over from an Eastern European country and were being asked to work in a manner that was inappropriate, and had managed to escape. And he'd then taken them to the police, and they were taken away and obviously dealt with in the correct manner. And that's a local issue, but that was absolutely modern slavery. They thought they were coming over to the UK to work in hospitality, and it was very much not the case. Managed to get away, and they were then part of a modern slavery component of safeguarding. But because he was quite astute and had children of his own, he recognised some of the signs and managed to get them safely to the police. So we're going to come on to a system called the 5 R's. So here's a handy way of remembering your roles and responsibilities. The 5 R's will help you to recall the steps you should take if you ever have a safeguarding concern. And it might be worth maybe putting these onto a poster, an A4 poster, or blowing these up and putting them on maybe on a notice board. because they are recognise, respond, report, record, and refer. So recognise, respond, report, record, and refer. And we're going to go through these one by one because they're very straightforward. It just gives you the triggers to think about what you would do should you witness or be made aware of a safeguarding issue in the workplace. So recognise. Knowing the signs and indicators of abuse and neglect will help you to recognise when something isn't quite right. So do you know? If you don't know, obviously today's the first step. Maybe you come on a full day's course. Maybe you highlight somebody in the organisation that could have a higher regard for safeguarding, and they could be your safeguarding lead. But do we know the signs and indicators of abuse? Always trust your instincts. Generally, if something isn't right, it isn't. Whether you notice suspicious bruising on a colleague or worry that a colleague has missed 2 or more days at work in a row, it's your duty to recognise these instances as potential indicators of a safeguarding concern. Now, before the alarm bells start ringing, and again, I generally have to quash this on the training day, just because somebody's had a day off work or a couple of days off work, absolutely doesn't mean there's a safeguarding issue in place. But it could be those 2 days that they've had off work have come after you've noticed their behaviour change. You've noticed them start being consistently late for work. You've noticed them look different, maybe not being as pristine as they would normally. Maybe you have noticed some bruising on their arm or leg. Maybe they are leaving straight away and not talking to people after the working day, and then they're off for a couple of days. It could be the start of something. So first R would be recognise. Respond. Once you've established a reason for concern, it's your professional duty to respond to it in an appropriate manner. Your safeguarding policy, let's stop there. First of all, have you got a safeguarding policy? This is something we can help you with. You may have a safeguarding policy. Has it been reviewed? Does everybody know where it is? Does everybody know what parts of it there is? It's going to detail the steps you should take to respond safely, and every company will have a different policy depending on what sector you're in, whether you're in education, whether you're in care, construction, leisure, whatever it might be. But it's going to help you respond safely and effectively to any potential safeguarding issue. You need to follow what it says in that policy, because that policy has been put together to reflect your organisation, and someone's put that together so that the steps are followed so you get the best outcome. So always be sure to do what it says and to do it as soon as possible, preferably straight away. Under no circumstance should you ever ignore a safeguarding concern. You could talk to your line manager, you could talk to somebody else, you could think about it and then respond. R3, report. Your first point of contact when it comes to reporting a safeguarding concern should be, and it could be this could be the same person or different people, the safeguarding lead. So do you have a safeguarding officer, safeguarding lead? You may call it something different, or obviously you'll have a line manager that you could talk to about, I've seen this, I've heard that, I've witnessed this, I think this might be going on. If you're unsure of who it is, seek advice in a way it does not involve giving away the details of the situation. There will be somebody in seniority in your company that could potentially take this role. All safeguarding matters should remain confidential and must only be shared with people who are involved in the safeguarding process. We absolutely don't want this getting around the shop floor, because this will then stop the person talking to anybody. They'll feel their trust has been broken, and potentially the issue won't go any further. But as I go back to the previous point, please think about maybe who the safeguarding lead, safeguarding manager could be. And it may not be a full-time job. It could be somebody has taken that role on, a little bit like a fire marshal, because they're already doing something similar. Record. It's really important to make a record of everything you've seen. It needs to be confidential. The reason for that is 2 or 3-fold, really. One, because you'll forget things. So if you see things, even if you're talking to your phone, voice notes on your phone, mention the date, the time, what you've seen, a good description, or just write down on paper. Maybe have a book. Obviously, if you've got this safeguarding lead or officer, you could email them as well. Do this as soon as possible after the incident, and every time you speak to another individual about what happened. So you're building up a case, almost a case or some notes about it, that should the authorities get involved, you can say, and this is what's happened. This is all the evidence that we've got. Write down exactly what happened, including exact dates and times, include the names and details of individuals involved, and record all possible information to ensure the most accurate account of the incident. And this is probably the most important and the key last piece, refer. If there's a genuine concern for the individual safety, or if you think someone might be a victim of abuse, neglect, or maltreatment, or any of the other safeguarding components we talked about, it could be modern slavery, it could be bullying, victimization, whatever it might be, you must report your concerns. Now, this is where things may change depending on where you live. This will usually happen via your practice manager, and in this particular case, this was for a local doctor's surgery, or safeguarding lead, who will escalate the concern with social services, the local authority, or contact the MASH, multi-agency safeguarding hub. And it'd be good for you to go and try and find out where and who yours is, because it could be they are situated in your local police station, they could be in your local authority, they could be in your local hospital, doctor's surgery, or they could be in your local council office. It depends where they are. So I know that I work in Northamptonshire and Cambridgeshire, and they're both in different places because it depends how your local authority is set up. So please go and find out where your MASH team are situated, and maybe get the name of the person just in case you ever need it. And then the MASH team is made up of delegates of 7 or 8 different organisations that look after safeguarding. So the 5 R's are really important. So it'd be great if you could potentially add those into your safeguarding policy, if you could display those maybe on a staff notice board, if you could start talking to staff about them, and they're really straightforward. So the 5 R's, workplace safeguarding, it's good system. So what measures should employers put in place? Well, employers should have a safeguarding policy. We talked about that just a minute ago, which should be communicated to all relevant staff with clear procedures to follow. And it should include training. What training is available for all staff? And it could be that the safeguarding lead would go on maybe a 2 or 3 day course. It could be that everybody else does maybe a webinar like this, or they come and do the level 2 course, or they could do an online course. But yeah, safeguarding is really for everybody, from top level of management through to everybody else on the ground floor. Because it says there, it recognises the difference between banter and bullying, and all the different indicators of abuse and neglect. Ensuring employees are made aware of policies and have clear processes for reporting any complaints. Would staff know what to do? Should there be a safeguarding issue in your workplace now? Do you think the staff would know what to do, what forms to fill in, how to contact anybody, and who your safeguarding officer would be? So it's absolutely worth thinking about what the staff already know. Meeting access needs of those with various disabilities, and please don't think disabilities are just physical disabilities. It could be a number of things. It could be learning disabilities, it could be behavioural problems, it could be physical disabilities, and everything else. And also, on the last point there, the 9 protected characteristics that we all have to look out for in the workplace, which need to be aligned for policies as well. So a safeguarding policy is absolutely the first thing to go back and do. Do we need a designated safeguarding officer, or in brackets a DSO? So while not a legal requirement, it's a good idea for companies and other organisations to have a designated safeguarding officer, or safeguarding lead as I call them, especially those over a certain size, and all those that employ have contact with children or vulnerable adults. I think even if you don't have contact with children or vulnerable adults, it's always worth somebody having the DSO part of their role, so that should there be a safeguarding issue, and it could be from a contractor, a visitor, somebody on maybe work experience, you're doing an open day and something happens, you've got that person that understands how it works. As the first point of contact for employees, the role of the DSO is to ensure the company has a safeguarding policy in place. We just talked about that. They may be involved in creating the policy as well as enforcing it, and should proactively monitor workplace wellbeing as well as responding to complaints. So there's an element of kind of talking to people, training involved with that as well. There are no specific qualifications. That's not quite true. There are various different safeguarding qualifications you can do, but it's not as high profile as say health and safety and fire, but there's certainly qualifications you can do, and various different training courses that you can undertake as well. But it's more about understanding procedures and principles and the indicators of abuse and neglect. So moving on to essential tools for the workplace. Safeguarding policy, we've kind of just touched upon. Have you done a safeguarding risk assessment? And it could be that after doing your safeguarding risk assessment, you've deemed the risk very, very low. and actually, no, we don't need a safeguarding officer, and we're just going to have a safeguarding policy that we're going to roll out and make everybody read and understand. But it could be that when you've looked at the safeguarding risk assessment, that some of those boxes have gone yes and turned to kind of red because you have public in the building, you do have children coming in, vulnerable adults coming in, you do operate outside of hours, you do open at weekends maybe, and then there could be a number of alarm bells on the risk assessment where you may need to have a DSO. Do you have a safeguarding incident form? So should there be an incident in the workplace, is it going to be written down on a piece of A4 paper, or do you have a proper safeguarding incident form where it's all laid out in front of you, and that gives you the prompts, or gives the person the prompts to write the information and fill all the boxes in that can then be escalated to the DSO and potentially to the MASH team? Do you have witness statement forms, so that should there be witnesses, whether they're members of the public or whether they are staff, they can then fill a proper instant witness statement form in that would sit with the incident form, and it then starts to build the case. Investigation form, if you've got a safeguarding officer, they may have to do an investigation. They may have to look into what actually happened. They may have to view CCTV footage. They may have to talk to people and interview people, look at the workplace, review risk assessments. And so if that's the case, that it would be better to have that on a proper safeguarding investigation form, which again would then make up the suite of documents. DBS, disclosure barring service, you'll have heard of that. It's a way of checking individuals when they come and work for you as to their past. Have they got any criminal records, for instance, and has there been any issues relating to their character prior to coming to work for you? There's various different levels of DBS, as you'll appreciate, but again, this is something we can help you with, and you may have that anyway. But DBS is definitely worth thinking about. What's safeguarding? And just going back to DBS, just suddenly thought of something. There is a DBS which will self-check. So every year it will then go around again, and it will give you the update. So it's absolutely worth going for the higher level DBS, rather than the kind of cheaper basic DBS if you're going to do one. Safeguarding staff awareness. What kind of staff awareness have you put in place for the team? And it could be that you're going to send around maybe the policy, the risk assessment, and maybe a little booklet possibly. Does safeguarding appear in your employee handbook? Does safeguarding appear in your health and safety handbook? Is there a video on YouTube that you could send round? Could you get some training booked in? Coming on to training, as we said earlier, we offer level 2, level 3 training, but it could be that you don't need that. It could be that it's an awareness session, just an hour's awareness, something like we're doing today, just to give people the awareness of what safeguarding is. And again, we talked about appointing a safeguarding lead. And it could be that they're already working for the company. It could be someone in the HR department or health and safety. It could be somebody that you just think would be a really good listener and the staff would trust. So it might be worth thinking about who that person would be. Is there a central information point where all this stuff is held? I'm a very visual person. I like posters and documents and things in an area where people can look at them. I'm not sure people always click on links or read things, but if it's on a big notice board, I think they probably would be more likely to do that. And certainly it could be part of your staff journey, employee journey, where you go by the health and safety notice board, the fire safety notice board, and this is the safeguarding information. On that board, you would have, signposting. Should you have a safeguarding issue, this is the person to talk to. Here's some links and various different things that they could look at. A big part of safeguarding is creating a positive culture where everybody feels included, welcome, and should there be a problem, we're not going to stand for this. We're going to look into this and stamp it out. Very, very closely linked to mental health, but creating a positive culture which the board, the senior leadership team, and all the managers understand is really, really important with regards to safeguarding. And there's a couple of safeguarding weeks that I've found, the first of which is gone, which is the Child Safety Week, but the second of which is coming up, and I thought it would be useful for people to understand that the National Safeguarding Adults Week is coming up in 21st to the 27th of November. What does that look like? Well, it looks a bit like that. So Safeguarding Adults Week 2022 will focus on the theme responding to contemporary safeguarding challenges. Safeguarding Adults Week is a time for organisations to come together to raise awareness of important safeguarding issues. So please don't think, like we said earlier in the call, or we don't employ children and vulnerable adults, so we're not going to take part. It'd be absolutely worth somebody trying to get on this, just to drop in on various different webinars or sessions to see how you can improve the safeguarding in your organisation. Because there's some really good themes. Monday, exploitation and county lines, self-neglect, creating safer organisational cultures, elder abuse, domestic abuse in the tech society, and then over the weekend, safeguarding in everyday life. So it's not just about care or education, tech society, organisational cultures, self-neglect. There's loads of different themes there for people to get involved with, and there's a link there, which if you want to take a picture of now, it'd be worth doing, but it's all done through the Ancraft Trust. And actually, the safeguarding policy I use came from the Ancraft Trust, and it's an excellent organisation for promoting safeguarding. So please look at that. It'd be worth thinking about maybe going on some webinars, using some of their literature, and seeing what you can do with regards to improving safeguarding over that period of time. So this could be the start of your improved safeguarding journey to support Safeguarding Adults Week in November. Okay, that's enough for me for a little while. I'm going to hand back to Rebecca for our second poll, with the question being, do you feel that you have the tools at work to effectively manage safeguarding?
Thank you, Dom. So I just launched the poll now. If you can select either yes or no to this question, we'll collect in the votes and review those afterwards. It's looking like quite an even split so far, so I'll just give a couple more seconds for a few more of you to vote if you haven't done so already. Okay, let's leave it there. And it's landed exactly on, just changed. So it's 52% said yes, they do feel they have the tools in place, and 48% said no, they don't feel they've got the tools in place. So really, really interesting, and quite different to our earlier poll as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks everybody for taking part in that and being honest, because I think it's very easy just to think the organisation is doing everything correctly, but obviously it is anonymous, so it gives us a really good feel. But yeah, it was largely 50-50. And again, for the companies and the organisations that do feel that safeguarding is being managed correctly and you've got the correct tools in place, brilliant. So again, it's the half that aren't, and it's what you guys can do. Is it that you're going to take part in the Uncraft Safeguarding Week and drop on some webinars and seminars? Is it that you're going to look at your safeguarding policy? Is it you're going to employ a DSO or upskill somebody who's currently working for you at the moment? Is it you're going to get them on some training, or just raise awareness around the workplace that we're not going to allow any kind of safeguarding issue. Everybody needs to support each other. And we're going to take a stance against anything like this. But yeah, signposting. We talked about MASH earlier, the multi-agency safeguarding hub. So it's absolutely worth you going back to find out the details of where yours is. As I said earlier, I've known these to be in council offices, social services, police, healthcare centres, doctors, or the local hospital. So if you don't know where yours is, it's absolutely worth going to find out where it is, and in your safeguarding policy, write that in. The multi-agency safeguarding hub is located at the council offices on Green Street, and our contact is Dom Greenwood or whoever it might be. No, don't put my name in there. I don't want to get all the phone calls, but you get the gist. Obviously, the police would be first port of call should the safeguarding incident be of criminal activity and dangerous enough for them to be involved. That's what they're there for. So please think about that. Also, and equally, citizens' advice have a really good safeguarding stance, and also will provide information. So maybe homework for people. Let's go back and find out where the multi-agency safeguarding hub is. Where's it located? Write it into the safeguarding policy, distribute that, and then see how we go from there. Training. Have you thought of training your staff to understand safeguarding, looking for these signs of abuse and neglect, embedding the safeguarding policy and knowing what to do if there was an incident or allegation? We can help. As I say, I'm the safeguarding trainer. We can run sessions in companies up to level 3. We do an online safeguarding ambassador workshop, and we also do delegated courses as well. So the course we offer is the level 3 Ofqual regulated safeguarding vulnerable adults and children course. We hold it for up to 12 people. And it's around about 6 hours with a short exam paper at the end. And obviously the certificate comes from the awarding body. We can also help by helping you develop your safeguarding policy. We've got various different safeguarding policies depending on the sector. And then dropping out of that would be the various different forms and check sheets and supplementary documents. Quite a number of these documents do link together, you'll appreciate, with mental health, health and safety, staff development, staff training, and HR, but also the various documents that you might need should there be an incident or an allegation. And there's some useful links there, and I appreciate there's quite a lot of information on that slide, and we can probably get these out to you as part of a signposting document. But you've got, there's a toolkit there, HSE, there's the Citizens Advice, Families and Children, the CQC, which is the Care Quality Commission. I'm sure a number of you will be aware of that. The MASH and just how that works with the government. There's Anne Craft again, and we talked about Anne Craft, and she's got some really good principles and policies and documents you can download. And there's a whole load of others on there that I've added on there, which if you want to take a picture, it'd be worth doing that. But equally, we can probably get those sent out with any questions that have come through. You've also got stuff like NSPCC, UNICEF, and various child-related kind of bodies.
Thanks, Don. So I think we're just, sorry to interrupt you.
No, sorry, go on, you go.
I was just going to say, we've just, on the back of that, just got one last poll to see if anyone would like to find out any more about safeguarding training in particular, or any of the other training that we offer. I'll just launch that quickly now, so it should appear on your screen. So if you select one of those, that'll pull through to us and we can reach out to you following the webinar. So just give a couple of seconds that to run, and then I'll hand back over to you, Dom.
Okay.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks everyone for that. And of course, you know where we are if you would like to request any training in future as well.
So we've got some more webinars coming up, managing an effective redundancy program in a couple of weeks' time in October, and then working with trade unions in November. So it's a couple of really good webinars there. The HR team are gonna be running. So again, save your spot by clicking on the link. I'm sure that's where most of you found out about today's webinar. Our ILM courses are going really, really well, and we offer level 3 and level 5, which is with Terry, our ILM trainer. So this is the next tranche. So some of these have already started, but you can drop on these at any point. So if you want ILM training or staff for that matter, please again access our training courses or just email us directly. And these are the dates for the ILM 5. I'm running a level 2 health and safety course in November. This will cover health and safety law, fire safety, risk assessments, DSE, workplace hazards, and all that kind of stuff. So if anybody's interested, that will be taking place in and around the Kettering area. And again, please do contact us, because there are various different discounts for people that have attended webinars and our current clients. Any further questions, please do contact us. As I say, we've already had quite a few come in, and as we said at the beginning, it's probably too many to do justice to. So please do send your question to inquiries@hrsolutions-uk.com. They will find their way to me, and we'll put all the answers together and send them back out. Your feedback matters to us, and again, if there's anything you'd like to talk to us about or send us any positive or negative feedback, again, we're always looking to improve the webinars. But equally, we're happy to hear about anything that you did find that was really good. So please do contact us. And really, all that's left for me to say is thank you. I think I've managed to come in with 7 or 8 minutes to spare, so it gives everybody a chance to go off and get their lunch or get a longer lunch break, which is always good. Thank you for your attendance and being on. And I do hope the information was well received, and you can use some of that information in your workplaces. And stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. Thank you very much.